a lot of fun as well. And here we go, the next two picks for Coast coming through. And as you said, they are high damage picks here. The Kayle for potentially the mid lane, and Yasuo also picked up, knowing the lane matchups.
Yasuo was a good lane matchup against Mundo. He's very strong at level 1 and 2, and then Mundo doesn't necessarily get strong enough by the time Yasuo can build some items. Would not be surprised if we see ZionSpartan with top lane Yasuo there, and a very squishy lineup, which can be augmented by the crowd control from Varus and the invulnerability from the Kayle intervention.
Yeah, and if they get really tricky with it, you can dodge things with Repel. For what it's worth, extra style points there in the wind wall. But Dignitas still looking for their last pick right here, hovering Karthus.
Would he do that? Yes,
Karthus. Now it could...
Lots of AoE damage.
Yeah.
Right off the bat.
Yeah, big AoE teamfight team here. I'm like almost second guessing myself. Like, is it top lane Karthus? Are they pulling a Quas here?
Is it jungle Karthus?
I actually want to see jungle Karthus.
I know, it's
Vector Wraith is really good right now.
I agree. Jungle Karthus is good.
No one's playing it.
Soon we will see it. Maybe in Challenger, because those guys seem a little bit more likely to do the crazy stuff.
Yeah.
This team composition for Dignitas, though, is extremely AoE heavy. I think if they can escape the laning phase, they're going to be fairly strong in team fights. But this is a hard lane. They cannot fall behind as much as they did like against TSM. Otherwise, it's going to be over before it started.
There we go. You saw the lineup on your screen real quick. And before we get into the game anymore, the teams are loading. Let's check in with who you guys thought was going to win on LOL Esports. And according to you guys, 56% of you think Dignitas is going to get their first win of the spring split and leave Coast without one.
Yeah, that is a very close fan vote, I'd have to say. Dignitas, after that 22-minute loss to TSM, needs a confidence builder. EG just had a confidence builder as well. You know, all of these games early on matter because the early positioning does a lot to a team's mentality. And Dignitas has had some mentality problems in the past. I feel like Scarra is either playing great or he loses his confidence and he just starts looking terrible. And he's been in a bit of a funk lately, and he really just needs to get his confidence back more than anything because we know he has the capabilities to be a top mid lane player.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, these guys are facing each other. You know, both teams who could use some confidence boosting games. Both these teams without wins right now. So if you're going to win against someone, you might as well be a team with a 0 in the win column. Yeah. And kind of ups your chances, I feel like. Statistically, they're likely to lose.
Statistically, what?
Statistically, the opposing team is likely to lose, so you're more likely to win. That's how that works, right?
Why is the opposing team more likely to lose? I don't understand.
It's science.
It's a 50-50.
It's not really science.
You can't just say science and make it true.
Yes, I can. It's how it works. Here we go, guys. Coast loading into the game on the blue team. ZionSpartan is going to be top lane Yasuo here. Nintendude Jungle in the Elise. And Shiphtur's that mid lane Kayle. Watching Dignitas walk their way out. Yep, Jungle Wukong, you called that one right, Crumbzz. Gonna have a fun time dashing around here. Here we go. People walking up to the river. Haven't seen this before.
Okay, so very early on in the game, Dignitas has to be careful not to lose control of everything, in a sense. Early on in the game, while Karthus can shove, he is vulnerable to Kayle fighting. Also, Yasuo is an extremely strong level 1 and 2 laner, meaning that ZionSpartan can push Cruzerthebruzer in the top lane. And the biggest thing they have to worry about is that Wukong's early jungle is mainly just about survival, and Elise is an extremely strong counter jungler. So combined, Coast has the potential of pushing in both of their solo lanes and then going and trying to kill or disrupt Crumbz's jungle. If that happens, it's going to be very difficult for Dignitas to pull off any sort of game plan because they have a very open early game vulnerability that I think Coast is going to try and exploit.
All right, guys, let's track Nintendude's progress and the solo lanes then. The 2-on-2, of course. Dignitas got their first pick in that one. We probably expect Dignitas to have a better time there in the bottom side. ZionSpartan, an aggressive ward up in the upper tri-brush. Nintendude going to be starting, looks like, his own blue buff here with help from Zion. So Coast sending their dual lane down bottom early to get the first shove. And actually, Dignitas looking for a lane swap here.
Lane swapping isn't that bad of an idea here. What this also allows them to do is defend Crumbz's red buff if they want to. Because now it's not about getting the soul. They only lose the one solo lane in the mid, and Scarra can still peel back a little bit for a support, and they will most likely outnumber if they decide to go for an invade. So a good positioning early on in the game by Dignitas, and it's going to make it much harder, if not impossible, for NintendudeX to disrupt Crumbz's early jungle.
And a random thought here as well as we look at how these guys are doing things. ZionSpartan went back into the jungle to go share experience in gold with Nintendude, seeing that it was a 2v1 lane. Nintendude also started Q on Elise, which I haven't ever seen from a jungle Elise.
You usually see W.
Yeah, and I trust him on it. Maybe it was a misclick, but I'm surprised to see that. Nintendude, though, back to his own devices here, starting his own red. And we might see these junglers go for the standard 3-on-1 plays.
There's going to be, I think there's going to be a little bit of lane pushing. If we see more of it, it's probably from Coast, because Elise can offer the ranged pushing. And what we're also seeing is we're seeing the top laners double team the jungle a little bit with their friends here. It's mainly because this is just what teams have to do nowadays. Since teams have gotten so good at 3-man diving or 3-man pushing, there's not even really a point of sticking around and doing it.
Oh,
maybe.
Man, look at this from Coast, though. They've sent everyone to the bottom side of the map. Is this really a 4-on-1 dive?
It would be. I mean, ZionSpartan's level 1, though, so he'd really just be there to watch. There's no way Cruiser is going to let that happen. It was a good ward he had over in the tri-brush, and this just means it's going to be a fast push by both teams. I wonder how deep Coach is going to try and go with this, or if they're going to try and get a dragon shortly after. They ran out of minions, though.
Yeah, well, Dignitas have their 3-man dive here in the top lane. QtPie about to hit level 3. You're going to see this duo lane hit basically 3, 3, and 3 on all these guys right there. Minions dying on this side of the map. It looks like Coast will just barely get the turret first, but these guys are trading turrets so far. But Cruiser level 3 to Zion's 2, I gotta say, that's a bit of a lead for Dignitas at the very least.
Yeah, very, very minor. It's hard to tell early on in these lane swap games. Now it's since Dignitas swapped top, this is Coast's way of trying to get something back in the bottom. But we've seen multiple trades here. Wild Turtle was talking about it as well. How beneficial is a super early dragon, which is worth diminished gold from the last season, versus some damage on the second turret? Dignitas is going for the second turret, whereas Coast is just going for the dragon, and they're going to get it for sure.
Yeah, Daydreamin doing a nice job of dancing the dragon aggro, and there we go. Dragon goes down. Kill credit goes over to WizFujiiN for 25 bonus gold right here. But Dignitas are staying in that lane. Half HP on this turret. And I believe, the second tier turrets don't get that bonus armor that you get for the first few minutes of the game.
No, it's just the outer turrets.
Yeah.
This is also the last patch in which the top and middle turrets won't have just almost a super Dorn shield of sorts, 20 damage reduction from champion auto attacks. The bottom lane will not have that, so it's going to be more of a choice for teams. I actually do like the change, even though it's come under a lot of criticism from some sources.
Yeah.
I know a lot of the Korean fans actually like the change.
Yeah.
But I think it's going to be much more interesting, seeing that there's more of a cost for Dignitas there, because really what just happened there is, even though they were the 2-man top lane, they actually got more out of it because Coast tried to do the counter and take the dragon. Yep. Coast wasn't able to push a second turret. What they theoretically should have done to stay even is just continue pushing, and we would have seen 2 turrets for 2.
So the game accelerating a little bit. A lot of structures dead. No champions just yet. And we're seeing Dignitas make a rotation to the mid lane here. QtPie joining Scarra, who actually, to be fair, Scarra's done a very good job in this lane that we thought might have been scary. Junglers were tied up doing other things, and Scarra's got a minion kill lead over Shiphtur. And the push now to the mid lane using Jinx. QtPie not going back to base just yet either, and the Flame Chompers as well helping to push Shiphtur back. So,
well, Shiphtur went over to help the top lane a little bit, and look out Nintendude, backing in a bad spot.
Stunned and ignited. He's going to be going down unless he can get to the lantern, and he cannot. First blood picked up there for Kiwi Kid, and his tango partner was actually Wukong there. I feel like QtPie might be jealous.
Yeah, that was a smart roam by Dignitas right there. The expected move was for them to go all the way to the bottom lane and start pushing. Instead, they roamed and found some kills in the mid lane. So very smart tactical maneuvering there by Dignitas.
And it's going to give them a bit of a kill lead, 1-0, and of course the gold as well in their favor here. And they're actually just staying in this mid lane. QtPie just now making his way across the map. Neither AD carry actually having spent time to buy. So they're sitting on no real items, but WizFujiiN has been sitting there killing minions for the entire time. He's at 50 so far. He's got to be rich.
He's freezing the lane right now, which has cost his team a little bit in map pressure, but has individually helped him. That's the trade-off. You can see why Dignitas, QtPie's CS is so low. It's because he was pushing 2 turrets with his team, where they were just pushing the minion wave down as quickly as possible and not caring about CS. And then because he generated the kill in the mid lane. We'll see which one is more effective. I'd like to think that QtPie's has been, but now they're going to go into a lane, and once WizFujiiN shops, they're going to have to deal with a bit of a gold discrepancy.
Yeah, temporarily, QtPie is going to be the better one off here. Has boots and a Vamp Scepter against gold in pockets, which doesn't have any combat stats, unfortunately, for Coast here. His mid laners still kind of trading apart. They have bought some items, though, so Scarra with the sustain, and there's a giant wave here at the top turret. Will Nintendude and ZionSpartan pressure Cruiser here? He's not level 6, but he's got an Annie, I should say, right behind him.
Yeah, Kiwi Kid's doing his own thing this game. He hasn't necessarily been near AmaCutiePie. They're hoping that Coast dives. He's waiting just outside of the fog of war. I don't think Coast is taking the bait, though.
Not going to go for it whatsoever. Knock up on a Cruiser, not a huge deal right there in Dignitas.
He took the cannon minion.
What a jerk.
Cheeky little Kiwi Kid. Not for you.
You're not a top laner anymore, Kiwi Kid. That's not yours.
It's true.
You're a support. You don't get gold.
He has the Doran's ring as well as the Sightstone. I mean, he kind of took that kill gold and is trying to turn it into some offensive itemization. Still no gold per 10 item on him. I'm a little surprised by that. I would think that he would go for a bit more gold.
There's a few players who go that way. I want to say Crepo doesn't buy.
Well, Crepo definitely doesn't, but especially with a kill. I always loved back when Philosopher's Stone and Heart of Gold were a thing. For those of you that remember the good old days.
RIP in peace, Heart of Gold.
Yeah. Every time I'd get a couple kills on a jungler, I'd want to build them as quickly as possible. Because the sooner you can start investing in the gold per 10 items, the more valuable they become. They're kind of a snowball item of sorts in that sense. But instead, Kiwi Kid went for immediate damage. He opted against the economic investment strategy, and he's going for immediate gratification.
So, going for the ward output. Why the heck not? Let's see what he goes for this one. So far, Dignitas actually on a bit of a freeze themselves in the bottom lane. We'll see if CutiePie can catch up in minion kills here, because WizFujiiN now with a BF sword in his inventory and a dragon in about a minute and a half. There's potentially room here for Coast to make a play off of that. The stinger here for Shiphtur as well. He's sitting in the mid lane farming. We're at a bit of a lull as we wait for the teams to regroup for something.
Yeah, Coast will have the exact timer on the next dragon, but they also don't have the teleport down that they would want. Luckily for them, if ZionSpartan decides to roam down for that next dragon, it's not like he's going to be leaving a turret to Dr. Mundo's devices, because they've lost every turret in that lane. I would expect Coast to try and group down for this dragon and fight Dignitas head on.
45 seconds right now. Zion jumping over the wall for the white camp here. Just still getting the farm. He's basically in farm mode. ZionSpartan just wants money. Coast shows back up in the bottom lane with still a 20-something minion kill lead, with the wave pushing in towards their turret. Scarra on the roam down as well. They look like they want to get ready for this one.
This is going to be a really crucial point in the game for Dignitas, because I think their team fight is really strong, and they have the potential to control the dragon, especially with that skill down.
Pretty much everything missed there. Crumbzz shows up. There's the Requiem as well, but it's not going to land on much. Nintendude dodges every single second of the Cyclone, but still has nowhere to go. Lantern's not going to save him either. Nice try by Daydreamin, and the chase is on. Flame Charmers, they land just barely on Daydreamin. Tibbers shows up to the party as well. Double kill here for AmaCutiePie, 3-0, and they're not even done. Crumbzz going to dive the turret as well. The rocket comes through, and look at that one, 3-0 instead.
Huge moves for Dignitas right there. Coast was actually trying to set up a team fight so that they could get the dragon, but Dignitas was one step ahead of the game, and they turned it around with a counter gank pretty much of their own. They have the stronger team fight. Look at all the AoE spells they were able to use in that. And Scarra was able to participate even though he was in the mid lane. Just take a look at this one more time. With the Chain of Corruption missing, it was just an easy start for Coast. They have 3.5 people. Even though NintendudeX kind of escaped the Cyclone, he went in the wrong direction and couldn't quite make it. Since AmaCutiePie got excited from the Jinx passive, they could just completely chase him down. That's the unnerfed arm time on the Flame Chompers, catching the Thresh and gives them the kills they needed.
Well played overall, and even to save him the ultimate too. I like the patience by CutiePie to know that he was going to kill these champions and save the ulti for when he needed it. But interestingly enough, Coast are actually the guys who get control over Dragon. Dig invested in the turret kills and a recall instead.
Yeah, Dig opted for the turrets, gave the Dragon to Coast. We'll see how that pans out. Considering WizFujiiN was just freezing the lane anyway, I don't know if I completely agree with that decision by Dignitas, but it's one they're going to have to live with. They are still up 2,000 gold, and they have now taken 3 turrets to 1. So maybe their building advantage will have its own benefits.
Well, I mean, you look at Dignitas, and they certainly got the advantage as far as their AD carry is concerned. Already the Bloodthirster completed for CutiePie, despite the prior lane freeze by WizFujiiN, right? The selfish benefit he was going for that you talked about. Dig got more team objectives, and their AD carry still got ahead here. And look at this, the mid lane actually left open as well, and Crumbzz is coming around behind. Nintendude Oh, good Kayle, but that might not be enough. Another, oh my gosh, well played there by Coast. He does survive. Oh, Shiphtur, no!
Shiphtur,
Scumbag!
he dodged it out of reflex, I feel like. You see a giant rocket coming towards you. Your first thought isn't to just go into it. Nintendude was unable to dodge it out of reflex, and the home run there from I'm a Cutie Pie.
Nice shot right there. So, Cutie Pie 3-0-1. Only 70 minions, but why get minions when you can kill champions? Zion back to the top lane, almost static Shiv. Sunfire, though, already done for Cruiser. It seems like at level 9 now, of course, his matchup's going to be really about itemization more than anything else.
Yeah, with Sunfire Cape being completed for Cruiser, I feel like ZionSpartan is pretty much just in farm mode. But as far as Yasuo goes, he has escaped the laning phase as well as he can. Scarra could not escape the laning phase in the previous game against Bjergsen, and neither could ManCloud, actually. It hasn't been a good day for Yasuo. ZionSpartan is doing better than most, though.
Yeah, he's actually got a slight, at least 4 minion kill lead over his lane opponent. Took a trade right there and chewed through Cruiser's ultimate and stayed more or less alive through it. Burned his Ignite for that. But now they're just equal on combat summoners. Let's see where we go here. So Coast, they've actually rotated themselves back down to the mid lane. I'm a Cutie Pie actually alone in the bottom lane right here, farming up his BT. WizFujiiN's got his Bloodthirster done as well. So these guys,
waiting. They're trying to get the pickoffs right now. They have a few pink wards inside their jungle.
Uh-oh.
Look out. They could really change some good stuff here.
This is going to be all kinds of painful. Scarra gets the kill credit on one. Nice play from Daydreamin, but I think it's not going to be enough for him. Crumbzz picks that one up as well. 2 more for Dignitas, and they're making some nice moves in the mid game.
And Coast just really lost control. They were trying to set up a gank of their own against Amundo, but the patience of Crumbzz actually to get the auto attack and the Q before any of his other spells let him maximize his damage. The armor shred on the Wukong Q just allowed his Cyclone to do even more damage there, chained with the stun of Kiwi Kid, who has been roaming a whole bunch this game. Both those things making a pretty big impact.
He's been part of 6 of his team's 7 kills. The only guy who's ahead of him on that one is Crumbzz with 7 of 7. So those two have been doing a heck of a lot to make the game happen here. And Cutie Pie, with his support leaving him, completely fine. Never died on a no-escape champion.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's because Coast hasn't been able to make any aggressive plays towards them. The few times they've tried to get up in I'm a Cutie Pie's grill, they've been counterattacked by even more people from Dignitas. I think the early game vulnerability of Dignitas has been easily surpassed here. They did the lane swap at the start of the game, which allowed Scarra to shove up the lane and get a slight edge on Shiphtur. So Scarra hasn't been pressed and has always been able to assist with Requiem in these fights.
Yeah.
Additionally, you could see that I'm a Cutie Pie hasn't really needed Kiwi Kid as a support, and it's allowed Kiwi Kid to roam around and be a part of 6 of the 7 Dignitas kills. It's really Kiwi Kid's roaming and Scarra's ability to participate with his Requiem that have given them this huge edge.
And speaking of more big edges, and just sort of the other stories in the game, Kiwi Kid, we talked about how he's been investing his gold. So he picked up Boots of Mobility, got the Distortion enchant for more flashes, and he finally did pick up some gold pretend with the Nomad's Medallion. So he is investing so heavily in a very successful future where Daydreamin's just like, well, I'm 0-2-0 and not having the best time of this one.
Yep.
ZionSpartan, I think, is the only guy who's, I guess Zion and Shift are the only guys going really untouched in this game. Well, we said it. This champ sort of unlocked the Coast solo lanes.
Yeah.
They're at least doing well, but I feel like they need more than this.
And there's always that danger when you pick such a low tank team that when you fall behind, no one can think about getting the fight started. Because now that Dignitas is tanked up a little bit, at least in the top lane from Cruiser, when that team fight phase does start, it might be hard for them to actually reach the back line. Against someone like Scarra, who, as we talked about in the team composition earlier when Curse actually ran a Karthus, just having a farm Karthus makes it much more difficult for the squishy people who dive to make things happen.
Watch out, ZionSpartan. The team is coming to try to kill you. Can you do enough damage to Cruiser before you die? Because basically all that's going to happen. Flashes and tries to dash through, but there's so many people to go for. Oh my god, ZionSpartan! Are you serious? Taking one down with him.
Spectacular play there by ZionSpartan. His E on Yasuo, the sweeping blade, does go up in damage the more you use it, and he got a max damage one there.
All right, well, Scarra popping the exhaust on Shiphtur over the top of the slow, and forced to flash as well. So Shiphtur just burning the Ignite, but taking away 2 summoners.
Yeah, and that was with a 2-level disadvantage that Shiphtur was able to do that to Scarra. That was a level 12 versus a 10. That's what I thought we'd actually see more of in the laning phase, but Scarra kept his distance so well from Shiphtur's Kayle that he's been able to keep his farm up, 171 to 140.
Yeah, significant farm score just in general for Scarra, keeping that 10 per minute thing going on pretty strong. Coast grouped up for Dragon a little bit early, actually. They went down to the area, but it wasn't there, and now Dignitas have made the rotation in time. The ZionSpartan's top lane, this is an easy man advantage for Dignitas, and the reveal in Nintendude.
Don't try.
Yeah, don't go for it. Okay. Nice try on the piercing arrow. Not the same Q snipe we saw against TSM, but from Cloud9 earlier. But Coast now trying to hold on.
First Dragon for Dignitas. They got control over that. Because the game is a little bit later now, and Dragon scales based on the average champion level of the game, that was the most valuable Dragon thus far.
Yeah.
Even though Coast had picked up the first two, and it just extends this Dignitas lead here. They're pretty much, at least, they have different mindsets. Kiwi Kid and Crumbzz are the ones going around looking for all the kills, and they're just enabling Scarra and Cruzerthebruzer to farm so far in the lane, and it's working quite well.
It is, yeah, exactly. They're doing a really good job of all this one. Nintendu kind of taking some farm for himself, but he's actually well behind Crumbzz. And Crumbzz, by the way, very offensive focus. I don't know if we touched on this yet, but Elder Lizard Brutalizer for the jungle Wukong. That is a damage jungler.
It absolutely is, and he's definitely trying to snowball ahead a little bit in this game, trying to parlay those early advantages. The Lizard Elder will help him clear the jungle much faster, but specifically, just for physical damage champions, it is much better than it used to be. Let's see how fast he can get down WizFujiiN.
Well, he's been knocked up into the air. The Wall of Pain does land as well. The flash from WizFujiiN trying to get him out. There's the Lantern. He's going to survive. Nice pickup there. Crumbzz forced to run away.
Yeah, he didn't actually get his Wukong Q, the crushing blow, down before he popped his Cyclone, which hurt his damage substantially. He was so worried about WizFujiiN getting out of range and wouldn't get the knockup for the ultimate that he popped it early. We would have seen the true damage of his damage Wukong if he pulled off his combo properly.
Nice, but it's going to be the red buff, though, still stolen away by Dignitas for their jungle control, and just the fact that they're kind of winning the mid game right here. Red buff on Crumbzz, nice and happy. Zion and Cruiser still battling in this top lane. I want to see this continue to move on. It's just a 10 minion kill sort of switch between the two.
Yeah, still a bit of a farm off in that top lane. Zion is hoping to get to a point where he can get his Infinity Edge done and then make some team fight moves. There's not too many things for him to chain off of knockup-wise as far as Yasuo is. Yes, Thresh has a couple of ways of knocking people up, but outside of that, he basically has to do it for himself, which isn't the type of Yasuo synergy we've been seeing other teams go for.
That's true, but I guess it fits the Coast style, though, because they're all about Zion split pushing. That's like their number one strategy is Zion. What do you want to play this game? Okay, carry us, please. Of course, they've added Shiphtur, who's an amazingly skilled mid laner as well, so some more threats on the team. But yeah, it's definitely a different style. It's not the like crazy engage comps we've seen from Yasuo's before.
I think one of the reasons that Coast looks so lackluster in this game is, especially during the NACL, they played a very conservative early game and then allowed Shiphtur to roam and make plays for them in the mid game. That requires their lanes to not lose badly, though. Once they lost control of their own jungle, whenever they would go and try and make a rotation, Kiwi Kid would go and cut them off. And past that, Coast doesn't really have many other game plans. So since Shiphtur's been shut down, you can see 0, 0, and 0. It just means the team doesn't generate kills because he is the one that generally makes things happen.
Well, that's true, and we'll see if they can do anything with this. Of course, Kayle and heck, Yasuo, both for what that's worth, do scale very nicely into late game.
Extremely nicely.
Yeah, I mean, maybe not Karthus nicely. I feel like that's actually a pretty contentious, like, who's the better late game mage.
Ooh, you know what? There's a blue elixir on Scarra right now, right after he completed his death cap. So he is as strong as he is going to get relative to the rest of the game at this moment once he consumes that blue elixir. They're going to try and force around this Baron area, knowing that Shiphtur's trying to go and farm. This thing would die really fast. Coast cannot take this for granted.
They're not going to get there in time, I don't think. They know about it. They're running across the map, but it's already down to half HP. Look at this thing drop right down. Jinx and Karthus, he's actually going to burn through a bunch of his mana pool, but that's going to go down. Baron Nashor picked up by Team Dignitas. Coast see that, and they're like, oh, crud.
Yeah, that was they made a boo-boo. Let's see if they can come back from this one. It just means not only are they down 8,000 gold, they now have to contend with all the gold value from that Baron buff. And Dignitas didn't have to burn any ultimates for that, so they are completely free to dive if they want on this one. The big thing is if Cruiser can get the turret on him, it means they can pull off a successful dive. Let's see if Dig wants to go for it.
Let's see what they do. They're sitting there in front of the minion wave. Next one coming up in about 15 seconds. Coast completely grouped in this mid lane. They know exactly what this game is. PewDiePie happy to even tank turret shots. Even if it's a backdoor bonus because he has Baron regen. Why not?
Yeah, exactly. So they're completely fine taking this poke, and look at them just retaliating some of it. I wonder if they're just going to try and push this straight up to the inhibitor. At some point, Coast is going to have to try and stop this one. The Coast wave clear is trying as best it can to get through that. They have the Varus and the Kayle. It's not spectacular wave clear, which is why you can see Dig getting some of that damage down. Here it comes.
They pull on a Scarra, but Kiwi gets one who engages ZionSpartan, getting the Kayle ulti, Nintendude running away. Can they get the damage up? But Elise falls. Wukong gets traded back on Scarra, still has Requiem though. This is not good for WizFujiiN. One's going to go down. Daydreamin, not in a good spot. Will he get dropped? Nah, aha, yes, PewDiePie taking him out. Shiphtur, the only man alive. 4-for-1 inhibitor controlled by Dignitas.
The team fight danger of a Jinx with a lot of kills, just chasing down even more from that. It was the best time for Dignitas to push. All the timings worked out just right for them. As soon as Scarra got his death cap, they got the Baron. Everything just worked out, and the dive was easy.
Very easy for these guys. Talisman of Ascension also was completed for Kiwi Kid to help push that team in. The Dragon's even up in 10 seconds. You can see the team running over to that side of the map as well. Everything looking great for Dignitas. Now 12-2 with a killed inhibitor, and they're just ready for the Dragon on the respawn. These guys are firing on point right now.
Yeah, an extremely stark difference to what we saw earlier when Dignitas played TSM. Or even when Dignitas played CLG yesterday. They looked lackluster. They didn't really look like they had a purpose. Their lanes were losing. And in this game, they have roamed around so well. They've been very decisive with their initiations, and they've looked like just a completely different team.
Yeah, an absolutely great team right there with champions that seemed pretty comfortable for them. I think, remember, a lot of our bans were focused on the mid lane, so everyone else got to play what they wanted. Dignitas Rush picked their bottom lane. Kiwi Kid got to make a lot of plays on Annie because of it, and it was them finding a good early game plan. I think that was a big part. Crumbzz and Kiwi Kid looked very comfortable.
The jungle Wukong has worked out quite well. You can see 2 and 9, and 2 and 9 on Kiwi Kid as well. It was kind of a dynamic duo of Annie Wukong. Is he going Volcano Wukong, or is he just the normal boring Wukong? Nah, he's not. He's doing like the Jade Dynasty Wukong.
Yeah, that's actually my favorite Wukong skin.
You don't like the Volcano Wukong?
I mean, it's cool and all, but I usually like the newest one.
Okay.
Just as like a general thing. I'm like an anti-hipster.
I was actually going to just say that. Good work.
You can if you want.
Too late now, freak. All right, so Dignitas actually has 5 people grouped up and ready to go. They miraculously still have some Baron buff left because they were so quick acting on that last Baron. Even when their Baron falls, I feel like they should still feel safe going for another turret dive. Because the distortion boots were bought by Kiwi Kid, he'll actually have his flash initiation up in about 45 seconds. So without Baron, I actually think they could go on the next flash tibbers.
Well, let's see. They've got 2 waves then until that happens. The inhibitor taking some attacks right there. I'm a PewDiePie happy to shoot that thing with his rocket launcher. Fishbones is its name. And we'll see what they go for this one. Not javelins, cleavers. They're like javelins, but they hurt more.
No.
Depends on how much AP
hurt
you
way
have.
More.
Depends on the AP. With Cruzer's build, I would rather have cleavers and javelins.
Well, yeah, if you build Randwood and Centaur in Italy.
Just saying. All right. All right, there we go. The siege going to continue. Baron buff no longer here, but the flash
almost up.
Almost up.
Got a couple seconds. Let's see. It's got 5 seconds left. So this initiation, they would want to get Kiwi Kid to drop the Tibbers, and they want it, in the perfect world, get the turret onto Cruzerthebruzer's Mundo because he's 232 armor, the whole crap load of regen. Yep. Last time it got on Crumbzz, and he actually died since he's a very squishy Wukong. But they don't seem like they have any qualms about going in here. They're posturing themselves very aggressively.
Oh, here we go. Cruiser going to go in, and nope, it's actually, I'm a PewDiePie pull dagger, but the turret's dead, so here we go. Nintendude dropped dangerously low, and control over the inhibitor is here. Coast haven't even engaged on this one. They gave up the inhibitor just for kind of receiving mean looks about this.
Yeah.
They backed out.
2 out of 3 inhibitors now down for Dignitas. They might want to shop before cycling down for the third, since Scarra and Cruiser are a little bit low, but it really just depends on how confident they are feeling as a team right now. They've actually spent a decent amount of their gold. They're sitting on about 4,000 or 5,000, which would still give them about a 10,000 gold lead, which might be why they're still sticking around.
Well, there we go. The minions swept away. They did look for the rotation on the minion wave there. About 25 minions in that pool, but they didn't get it here. Mid lane inhib should be coming back up, and there it is, actually. Dignitas going to stay for this one.
Yeah, well, may as well. If Krost gave up the last one, they might want to give up this one, but they land a Cocoon. There's a fight!
Scarra dangerously, he drops there without getting to do anything there. The fight comes in. Look at the engage with WizFujiiN trying to survive. He does survive for now, but QtPie finds him. 1-for-1 so far in this fight. Now will Coast push them out of the base? Not before losing their inhibitor.
Pretty good catch by Coast in that fight, but it just clearly wasn't enough. A lot of damage got dumped into that Kayle intervention.
Yeah.
But as a team, Coast just wasn't able to re-engage. Running through the Karthus is something they can't really do. ZionSpartan, especially without an Infinity Edge, can't go in and do any type of meaningful damage onto QtPie. He'll go in once. I feel like KiwiKid will just stun him, and then that Infinity Edge, QtPie would finish him off. So we can just see the nice combo here. They chained double CCs into Scarra and then blew him up from range. And at that point, they wanted to just run away as best as possible, which they did pretty well. They had pretty good disengage because they're pretty much all range champions. It did mean they had to abandon their inhibitor, though.
Yeah, and you talked about sort of Coast being unable to chase them as well. You mentioned that there's no real knock-up synergy here for ZionSpartan. I haven't seen him ult almost at all this game, and certainly not as a re-engage tool here. So,
yeah.
Unfortunately, Zion's been sort of sitting there auto-attacking. Finally finished an Infinity Edge, so that's done for him. But a much less frightening Yasuo from what we've seen in some of the games in the LCS so far.
Yeah, this is definitely not Yasuo's day.
No.
He's 0-2 so far. This Baron is too fast for Coast to even consider trying to stop. I do think Dignitas has played a much better game this time. Surprisingly, like the last 3 games of the day here have been very one-sided.
Yeah.
We had very competitive games, I feel like, in the first day, but here they've been, totally
decisive.
Different. Yeah, incredibly decisive.
Fairly clean.
Yep.
I feel like good decision making. They're not getting too aggressive with dives. Remember, EG actually didn't have anyone die for the last 15 minutes.
Yeah.
I feel like the third kill from CLG was minute 12 or so.
This one, 13-3 as well. It's a surprising champion select to work out for Dignitas because normally teams have been so paranoid about what to do in the early game. And especially Dignitas has had issues falling behind in the early game. If I think back to when Dignitas was a very strong team in North America, which I think was in the start of Season 3, they were doing it with, Xin Zhao and Diana and KiwiKid on stuff like Elise in the top lane and Draven from QtPie, even Graves, just like these early game champions that would just dominate lanes. And then because Dignitas was so far ahead, they would just kind of push all the lanes and win because they were ahead.
Yeah.
And then when they stopped being able to win the early game, they kind of stopped being a dominant team. They started losing a lot.
Yeah.
Which is weird how they'd pick the Karthus in the Mundo, but then still win the early game. It was kind of just a miraculous performance by KiwiKid to get them through that early game and make plays happen. Because the team comp wasn't actually speaking to an early game domination, but they dominated the early game anyway, and we're seeing the results of that. Here's a fight.
There we go, the rocket comes across, and there's the knock-up on the 2. ZionSpartan just barely getting away, but then still dies. Looks like everyone else forced to run so low on the health bars here. Of course, Scarra has already Requiem, but it's enough to get them into the base. 3 members already dead. Sorry, 2 already dead for Coast, and Dignitas just completely in control. They're going to take the win at about 31 minutes in and put themselves on the